Ulonka tabati yada to ye ko madaifa. Inu to ye ko je love bipa. Oba tala, oba takutakun. Songo Eshu, Ogun Oya Osun. Kini ṣẹ̀ṣe tán ṣe nílé yìí o. Ó jẹ́ lọ jára rẹ̀.
Alafia, peace and power, family. What's good with you? Welcome to another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. I'm your host, Orisha Bami, and we're back with the Shango brothers in the building tonight with Baba Khepra Ptah. Peace and blessings, Aboroboya Boshishe Baba Ptah. What's good with you?
Boroboya Boshishe Abato Sori Orio Fun. Kao. You know we gotta pay homage to Baba.
BAC. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we back, man. Shout out to the tribe. Shout out to Patreon, new channel subscribers. I see we're getting some numbers picking up with those both. I definitely give appreciation to y'all. Patreon family. We'll be back. I want to say I'm shooting for this weekend to get it cracking with y'all. And then I know I definitely got to get the call from last week uploaded. So I'm gonna definitely get that done as soon as possible, family. So I appreciate y'all patience and grace with me, trying to multitask and getting these things done. But without further ado, Bob Ptah, welcome back, man. I appreciate you. The last conversation was epic, as they always are. And I know you had a whole lot more in the clip, in the chamber that you want to let loose, man. So look, I had to bring you back as soon as possible, man, to get this thing cracking. So without further ado, you know, Matrix Part 2, let's get it.
Indeed.
Yes, sir. So to pick up where we left off, because the last one was another dope one. We didn't get a chance to talk about the mind and how we can create things, you know, in the mind in regards to kind of like how there were several parts in the movie where I remember one of the little boy that was bending the spoon, you know what I'm saying? He was like, you know,
Yes.
he bent the spoon, but then he was like, well, what if it ain't no spoon? Like, so there's a lot of different, you know, a lot of different intricate, I feel like parts in that movie that spoke to metaphysics. So,
yes.
You know, the title, you know, I feel like very fitting for what we're about to get into. So when it comes to that, Baba, based off of your experience and your limitless wisdom that you possess, man, what is it about this matrix, and what is it about the mind and how we can create things in the mind within the matrix?
Now, when you go back to the first of the 7 principles of Tahuti, it says it's mentalism, right?
Yes, sir.
It says the all is mind and the universe is mental. So our minds collectively is helping to construct and maintain this matrix. However, there's more to it than just that. Now, let's get a little bit more into the characters of the actual movie. And I want to talk more about that first trilogy. That's what I find to be the most interesting. So when Morpheus tells Neo, your brain makes it real, this explains that the matrix is interpreted through electrical impulses in the brain. He's giving one of the most important metaphysical keys in the entire film. And he's saying that reality as we experience it is not the external world itself, but the brain's interpretation of signals. Okay, now this is important because it has a lot to do with how we're having to create and maintain our world in ways in which we may not be consciously aware of. So it's not just the sci-fi movie that we're talking about. We're talking about how this aligns with everything from neuroscience to quantum theory, Ifa cosmology, and the multidimensional models of Val Valerian's work. Now, the statement means your experience of reality is a constructed interface, but it's not the thing itself, okay? The matrix uses electrical impulses to stimulate the world, and our physical world uses sensory signals and neural firing to do the same. In both cases, the reality you experience is more of a rendering, not necessarily the source code itself. This is why when you study the traditions of Ifa, or whether it's even a Dogon cosmology, and certain other metaphysical traditions, it teaches you that the world in which we live in is actually a replica of the actual world, okay? So this becomes significant when you connect to the idea of, well, the subconscious and the superconscious, which we spoke of earlier, or should I say in the first chapter of the Matrix, the metaphysics of the Matrix. We're talking about these programs called agents, right? Well, if your brain is interpreting electrical impulses to create your reality, then your subconscious beliefs, your traumas, and patterns act like filters. And these shape how these impulses are interpreted. So, two people can experience the same thing but live in different realities because their internal programming interprets the signals differently. This is why we have to allow ourselves to also be willing to see the other points of view as well. Otherwise, you'll have that story of what happened with Eshu and the two friends, where he walked between them and they couldn't come together on what Eshu actually looked like. They got caught up in ego. So therefore, they were not able to see each other's point of view. And this led to the destruction of their friendship. This is exactly how we look at the thing that's going on between Agent Smith and Neo. This operates as a metaphor, how Agent Smith also represents the atomic, automatic condition and response. However, he acts almost like a trickster in so many ways because he hijacks your perception. However, when Morpheus explains the brain's role, he's actually telling Neo that the real prison is not the simulation itself, it's the unquestioned interpretation of symbols. So one of the biggest setbacks is our faulty core beliefs. Okay? Because it's kind of like a computer virus, and you get layers upon layers of viruses built on this one, or should I say programs, and it slows down the whole thing and it causes the program to crash. And that's what happens when you build a whole bunch of layers of ideas on top of a false belief, which happens a lot in this society, in this world. I mean, if you pay attention, right, in the early 1990s all the way to the early 2000s, you had to understand, or should I say, be subject to what I call popular opinion, the Latin word, vox populi. But when they started to really get these algorithms going, it went beyond just popular opinion. Now you got to deal with information overload, and you have to be able to decipher and discern, right? So you have to have a little bit of discernment, because before, where they would hide information from you, now they just pour a whole bunch of information on you. So a lot of times, a lot of people are suffering from mental fatigue and everything else. They're tired because when your mind is tired, your body is tired. Just like in the Matrix. When you die in the Matrix, you die in the real world, right? So pretty much that's what's happening. Our minds are tired because we're taking in way too much. And the mind was not designed to take in all this information at the same time. So a lot of people be on their phones all day. They be on their computers all day, swiping and listening. You know, whether it's in the algorithm or not, they may get stuck in a certain way of algorithmic forms of thinking. So
it's called subliminal seduction. That's what's happening. We're being subliminally seduced, you know, to operate on the frequency of the matrix, or within, you know what I'm saying, the matrix. So that's a real thing.
Indeed. You know, and we talk about subliminal seduction. They've been experimenting with this ever since the 60s, or should I say the 40s, 30s and 40s. You know, we had spoke about the Tavistock Institute a while back, but we're also talking about how they've been playing with our minds through not only subliminal messages, but also by what I call collective coercion.
I like
because
that.
you have to deal with the thought police who are reinforcing popular opinion or misguided concepts in which they would like to subjugate you to, not thinking that they're subjugating you, but feeling that they're actually enlightening you. That's the scary thing about it, right? So this is why you have to transcend algorithmic thinking. Now, way before I was even hip to what the internet was, when I was between wake, sleep state, I got a download that says you're going to want to never even heard of an algorithm. Okay. Well, now I understand why, because at the time I was quite the community activist. You know, my whole thing was I understood that people were under hypnosis. So the question is, how do you get them out of it? Or how do you persuade them to look for a way to find themselves out of hypnosis? Of course, you know, one person cannot be everyone's, they can't be everyone's Morpheus, that's for sure. You know, you have to listen to your own inner Morpheus, and you have to awaken your own inner Neo. So I want to talk a little bit about how this has affected us as those who are on the path of Ifa, because many are starting to understand Ifa to be a binary divination system. And Ifa shows us the reality is structured and represented through patterns that we call Odu. That operates like a binary code. You got the open and closed marks, kind of like the ones and the zeros, right? One mark represented the light, the two marks represented the darkness, and so on. So these patterns describe the underlying structure behind events, emotions, and choices. Now, when Morpheus talks about electrical impulses, he's pointing out to the same principle. The world you experience is built through signals, and these same signals follow patterns. From the Ifa priest perspective, we read the Odu and we understand the pattern behind what it is that we're looking for. So just as Neo learns to read the green code behind the matrix, from this angle, it's safe to say that the world you see is a translation of deeper information. Now, the priest navigates the matrix in so many ways. In this, they do this by reading the binary structure beneath appearances, just as Neo learns to navigate the simulation by seeing the code. Just as you can't just say, put 2 and 2 together and you get 22, because like I mentioned in part 1, when you're only dealing with symbols, you're not looking at the underlying reality. You put 2 twigs and 2 twigs, that's not 22, that's 4. But when you think only in the term of the symbols in the outer layer of things, then you put 2 and 2 together and get 22. You see? And that is unfortunately how a lot of us have been indoctrinated and educated to learn, to look at the symbol and only look at which is on the surface and not look at which is underneath, or even to be able to feel what's underneath. Greetings, my big sister. Big sister will now.
Oh, yeah. The big mama in the house.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So we look at earlier, like we had talked about Greg Braden's interpretation of the quantum field and how it fits here, where he argues that the universe is a field of information that responds to emotion, belief, and intention. So, you know, Oshun is the feeling that we need to bring something into manifestation.
Yes, sir.
You need a feeling. There's desire.
Yeah.
So as much as we love Eshu, when we get into the Odu, we learn that Oshe Torah, which is also an incarnation of Eshu Odara, we learn that he is the son of Oshun and Arumila.
You know what's dope about that? Now I've heard. Okay. Now is this Eshu in general or Eshu Odara?
Eshu Odara, but
okay.
But all Eshus can be born off of Eshu Odara.
Well, the only reason I asked that is because there's certain Odus or stories I've heard that Eshu is the child of Oya. So
yes.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was curious as to when is it all Eshus or is it just Eshu Odara? Because I've heard of that one too. I've heard that story too, but then I've also heard stories of him being, or I should just say Eshu being a child of Oya as well. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. But I want to chime in, man, because I always like to bring my little library out. But this book right here, family, if y'all ain't got these the African creation it's energy.com series, or do yourself a favor and holler at them and grab. They got a whole, I think, like 7-8 books in their compilation, but this one is, all of them are dope. But this one, I love it because it's like the cover of it is Supreme Mathematics, but you see the matrix code kind of like, you know what I'm saying, with the binary in there. And I love how they break down, they go through all the spiritual systems, even like the Taoism and I Ching and all that. I don't know if y'all can see it, but this is, they're breaking down the Odu in this one. So they got like the 16 major Odu, and they're breaking down, from Ogbe all the way Ofun. And then they have the patterns with the lines, the ones and the zero. It's dope, man. It's a dope book. So I want to give them a quick shout out because I feel like it flows, effortlessly with what we're talking about in regards to the matrix. One of the things I want to ask real quick, Baba, I'm going to get up out your way. When we talk about the power of the mind, right, we also know, especially in Ifa or Isheshe, that there's also this thing that we talk about, the power of the tongue, which is what? Ofo Ashe, right?
Right.
That's a very powerful one too. And I know most people know about, but you know how they say, when you speak things, you can literally manifest it. So just like how in our mind, when we meditate or we do, incantations or we do visualizations or whatever you want to call it in our minds, we can manifest that way. But when we speak, we can also manifest things as well. So is there a correlation between the same creative process that we could do, in our minds, mentally, or, and does that correlate to how we create things by speaking? Like, in the Bible, they say in the beginning was the word, you know what I'm saying? Like, so how does Ofo Ashe connect to this matrix thing when we're talking about creating? Because I know sometimes I feel like we can bless ourselves with the things that we do and say, and we can also curse ourselves with the things we do and say. So how does the power of Ofo Ashe correlate or tie into this thing with the matrix?
Because just like any computer program that's highly advanced, the matrix is voice activated. So you have the ability to command the universe with the voice, you see. So in this case, you go to Eshu to properly help you translate these signals and frequencies that we're not only sending out, but also receiving.
Sure. See,
now when you get into Western magic, there's a formula. It says abracadabra, but abracadabra literally means I create as I speak. It comes from an Aramaic. That's what it means. See, so just about in many of your major religions, it talks about being able to speak and bring things into being just with your speech alone.
Yeah.
Because you're sending it out into the field, you see, and you're sending ripples into the field, and your thoughts and everything else is influencing the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the environment in which you're observing is not separated from you as the observer. So I'm going to get into that because it also, kind of corresponds with the idea of how we change ourselves within. It talks about in the verse in Ifa and in Ofun, Erete Ofun or Ofun Erete speaks about when being initiated, then initiating themselves. And there's also another verse that speaks about changing the way you think.
Yes.
Right? So if you change the way you think, you'll be able to manifest a different type of reality.
Facts.
Because your thoughts have a lot to do with what's going on as well. Remember, we talked about how I did the ritual on the first sphere of the tree of life, and everybody was wearing white when I went outside, because that's dealing with that Obatala, Osirian energy, that energy of Kether. And when I went out that day, I ran into all sorts of people wearing white. And then I went down the street and I looked on the sidewalk and someone had written the word Jah with white chalk. So everything was already set. The intention was set in motion. And the higher self, subconscious, superconscious mind will lead you into that situation or create the environment where the universe will conspire to bring it into being.
Sure.
See, this is why you have to have a certain amount of command, presence. You have to recognize and reinforce your very being. That's why you have to work with your physical body, because you are a spiritual being within the physical body, but you want things to manifest on the physical plane. If you do not respect the physical plane, how do you expect things to manifest? That's why there's rituals. That's why there's physical rituals that we do along with the prayers and visualizations. Or you might write something down that's on your mind. When you write it down, you're beginning to manifest it into the physical reality, because you begin the process of taking it from heaven to earth.
Yeah.
In a Christian prayer, it says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Well, that's the law of correspondence, as above, so below. So when we look at the multidimensional model, right, it adds another layer. Now, this gets into Valerian's work, where he describes third density as a training environment where the conscious learns through limitation. The brain, in this case, is the model, right, where it takes information and interprets it, okay, but it's not the source. So in this interface, the brain is this interface that filters multidimensional awareness down into a narrow band of perception. So when Morpheus explains electrical impulses, he's pointing to the fact that the brain is a limiting filter, not the source of consciousness. The brain is not the source of consciousness. Okay. So this bears witness to the fact that you don't really die, because a lot of what we learn here in the West is that when the brain shuts down and the heart stops beating, that's it for you. But all that happens is that you shift reference points. You see? So it mentions many pastors like, well, Yes, in Lukumi and Santeria, they talk about 21. In Ifa, there's 256 because there's an Eshu, right? Elegba is an incarnation of Eshu. So there's 256 different roads where Eshu is found. Every Orisha has his own Eshu.
Facts. Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
real.
so we look into what Valerian describes as a shift from third density perception to higher density awareness, right? So when Morpheus explains electrical impulses of the brain, he's not talking necessarily a biology lesson, but he's giving the metaphysical key shared by Ifa, quantum theory, and multidimensional cosmology, right? Reality is an interpretation of a deeper information. You change the interpreter, you change reality. So the spoon, right? Earlier you mentioned the spoon bending.
Yeah.
That scene is one of the most clearest cinematic expressions of the principles of Tahuti. The holographic model, right? The matrix style, fractal structure of reality. It's short, but it encodes an entire lesson in metaphysics, like you point out. So when Neo visits the oracle, he runs into a child who appears to cause a spoon to bend with his mind. Now he explains to a puzzled Neo by saying, do not try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Now this line is dealing with mentalism, the first principle of Tahuti. The boy is telling Neo that physical matter isn't the thing you're interacting with. If you try to force the external world to change while believing it's solid, separate, and fixed, you're fighting the illusion from inside of the illusion. The holographic model, the spoon, is a projection, a rendered interface, a fractal universe. Okay? What is a fractal? Basically, various parts of one thing. When one thing is basically broken down into self-similar parts, these are fractals. Holographic replicas of which it breaks down into. So in a fractal universe, the spoon is a pattern repeating on different scales. It's not an isolated object. The boy is saying, don't fight the projection. Change the code behind it. Don't wrestle with the angel. Now instead, only try to realize the truth, right? This is the correspondence and vibration in action, okay? The truth is, he's pointing out, is that the physical world is not the fundamental layer. The matrix is a symbolic version of the holographic principle. The deeper reality is information, not material. So realizing the truth means shifting your awareness from the rendered world to the underlying field, the object to the pattern, the effect, the cause. Okay? All of this, okay, this is basically the effect. So we have to deal with the origin of causality. So when you pray, right, and you meditate, visualize, and you tap into the higher planes, it takes a minute for it to come down into the physical realm. That's why we do physical things, to make things happen in the physical plane, such as do ritual offerings and dance and so on, because you have a physical body for a reason. Yeah. Otherwise, you could just sit around and things just fall out the sky. But we're told that we got to do some things.
Y'all saying the drums, meditation, they all can help create, make things manifest.
Exactly. So even when they're doing the Ptah drums at a bembe, it's almost like they're playing Odu on the drums. You see what I mean? Because it's happening to certain frequencies where each Orisha has its own pattern and frequency, and then they start intensifying, and then somebody gets mounted, and then the Orisha comes down and speaks for that person. Or it comes through the feet and up, depending on which Orisha it is. Shango comes down from the head down. Other Orishas come from the feet up. And ancestors come from the feet up. That's how they know you're faking. If you're faking, because if they take the stick and swing at your feet, you jump, then something's up. Ooh, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Right. Yep. Keep on saying it too.
Right, yes, right. Ifa tells us to use our mouth to change things. Indeed. So you go. There's some truth to it. When Jesus says it's not about what goes in the mouth, but what comes out the mouth that defies us. Now I have to balance that out, because certain things you don't want to put in your mouth. But I will tell you this: if you're going to be talking and saying certain things, you got to be mindful of what's coming out of your mouth.
Facts.
Because, as they say, there's a proverb in D Lagoon that says your tongue can either make you or break you.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful what you say and how things are said, because you're also tapping the tones and frequencies, and you got to also be mindful of when to say them, because not everybody's receptive to what you got to say,
Nope.
right? So, so you're talking about the spoon. All right. So anyway, the spoon, that's just only as a mental construct. And correspondence, the spoon is a reflection of your inner state. Huh? So in vibration, you got to change your frequency. The spoon's form shift. In polarity, the spoon is both real and not real at the same time, but it's depending on perspective. And then you got the rhythm. The spoon's form is part of a cycle of perception. Then you got the cause and effect. Your belief determines the outcome, and gender, the active will, and the receptive or perceptive aspects. These forces unite to create the experience.
Look, you sound like you're dipping in the alchemy too. Listen, because now look, you bringing me back to the Kybalion and the 7, principles of Tahuti, because when you talk about like the masculine and feminine, what I'm saying, energies,
Yes.
and how, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because the masculine is we're projecting, we pushing out, like we, you know what I'm saying, and then the feminine is receiving, it's taking in, you know what I mean? So it's
That's
like
right.
you're hitting them with some science now. You're hitting them with some science now. And say it louder for the people in the back now, Baba. People in the back need to hear you too.
That's right. Remember now, when Morpheus had Neo in the simulation room, he said there changes into one of these, and he pulls out what? What he probably pulls out? A battery.
Well, a lot of, yeah.
A battery has a positive and negative charge in order for the battery to function.
Yeah. And if you think about it, they always connected to batteries. Like that cell, the little incubator or whatever you want to call it, like the little water thing. I forgot what what I mean, the holding cell. I don't know what you call it, but that cell type thing. They always connected the batteries in that, and then they were connected while they were plugged in too. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? There was a lot of deep layered metaphysical, visuals in that movie, for real.
Indeed. That's why a lot of people say that movie was a teaching. That's what that Trinity was a teaching, is breaking off deeper truths.
Yes, sir.
All kind of people got involved in you see, Baba Metahochi Ibashe.
Yes, sir. He about to move to the great elder, ancestor now, but powerful elder as well.
Definitely. What I like about Baba Metahochi is he also made that attempt to show you the universal cosmology of West African traditions. He showed you how there's a workbook that he has that shows how there's the Orisha and the Voduns that show up in the particular Odu, and he showed how that corresponded.
I think I might have that too, man. That's something I might want to like do some presentations on in the Patreon, because I think I got that one of his books. I know I have something similar to that, because he breaks down like the comparisons of not just the Odu, but like how even the Odus and body parts correlate to like astrology, if I'm not mistaken, too. So yeah, that's what's up. I believe I got one of them.
Beautiful.
That's dope.
Yes, you can get his works. I definitely would recommend getting his works, because those are jewels.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, Neo is being taught that the world he sees is a simulation of rules, not the rules themselves, but a simulation of rules. Okay, so then the boy says, you'll see that it's not the spoon that bends, it is yourself. This is the deepest Tahuti principle right here in the entire film, which this boy is saying. First of all, you don't really change the world. You change your relationship to the world. You change your perception, and the world rearranges itself around that shift. So this is the essence of mentalism, cause and effect, correspondence, and vibration. At some point in time, I don't know if you remember the exercise, I just had everybody just repeat mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. You want to meditate on these 7 principles, okay? Because basically, they're universal principles dealing with how the universe works. So anyway, as far as the holographic model is concerned, the observer is part of the projection, not separate from it. So Neo bends the spoon because he's bending the pattern of himself that perceives the spoon. You don't have to get mad at everything. You can choose to be mad. You see what I mean? I'm gonna put it to you like this. If you smile, you don't have to walk around cheesing shit. All you got to do is visualize yourself having a smile, and people will pick up on it. Look up Montauk Chia's works, The Internal Smile.
Mm.
You can
How
actually.
you spell that name, Baba?
Montauk Chia is Mantak, Chia, Chia.
And
He
what was the
wrote
name
a
of the book
whole
again?
The Internal Smile or the Inner
Appreciate it.
Smile.
I'm gonna check that out. Appreciate it.
So just walk around. Look, you can be serious, but you visualize the smile on your face,
Yeah.
and people pick up on it.
Listen, the energy is a real thing, man. I'm gonna share a story real quick in regards to that, because there's times like where I could project energy, you know, intentionally, and know for a fact that people received it. Because, like, for example, one of my biggest pet peeves is like being in the gym working out, and say if you're at a bench that's not too far away from the mirror, you know, you're trying to check out your form, or you're trying, you know what I'm saying, you're just trying to see what's going on, and there's somebody that comes stand directly in front of where you are, in front of, you know what I'm saying, like that. I don't know why, but that drives me nuts. Like it get under my skin, because I'm like, you got a whole damn, the mirror is the size of the damn gym. Like, you got all this space that ain't nobody taking up. You gonna come stand right here. So it's been times when I sit there and just literally just like do the Superman eyes, like just look through them, like, you know, I'm saying things on the inside. I ain't gonna say it out loud, but I'm saying things. But I promise you, like, bro, when I tell you, I know for a fact that they feel it, and they you know what I'm saying, they'll move, because it's like, that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. So we can really shift and send a lot of energy, positive, negative, aggressive, passive, whatever you want to call it, by just being really, really stern with the intention in which whatever it is that we're feeling, or whatever it is that we're projecting into whatever situation and scenario. I know that because I've seen that happen in real life many times.
Indeed. And you know, you can see with your eyes closed.
Yes. Yeah.
And one form of proof of this is when you're going, or you see someone going to hypnosis. A person will have their eyes closed, and they're doing this in front of them while their eyes are closed, because they're still seeing that. They're still perceiving that on some level. A lot of times when people have out-of-body experiences, or when they astral project, they report that they will go to a part of their room where there were slippers, but in the astral realm, they see a pair of shoes instead. Or when they project out into the, you know, in the greater area, they saw mountains, but in the astral realm, they're huge gumdrops. Patterns are still there. Perception.
That's deep.
So the spoon is teaching the moment where the film compresses that alchemy you was talking about, so-called hermetic philosophy, holographic physics, fractal cosmology, simulation theory, and the matrix is on in internal logic. Now, reality is not something out there to be controlled, okay? It is something in here to be understood. And when you shift your consciousness, the world shifts with you. You see, here's the thing. Remember, as above, so below, as within, so without. So all the way down to a quantum level, when you transform your inner being, you're shifting everything within your being, and therefore you're shifting the circumstances of your life. A lot of us look good on the outside. What's going on the inside? Remember when Jesus got mad at the Pharisees for bringing him a dirty ass cup? It was dirty on the inside. It was shiny on the outside. He said, "How dare you shine the outside of the cup and give me a dirty cup?" The cup was filthy, right? It's a metaphor about how a lot of things actually are beneath the surface, right? In this society, we're told that we have to look good. Don't talk about what's eating at you. It's not really good for your mental health. So we have to acknowledge the fact that there's issues, you know, to be transformed, because you can't transform a situation if you don't acknowledge it or acknowledge condition. Now, the highest aspect of you, though, the highest aspect of your spirit is not conditioned, is unconditioned. However, in this physical form, we go through perceived conditions. Now, the oracle and the architect is something that I also want to talk about too, because you're dealing with the left brain, right brain, and the third eye being utilized to see deeper, and the brain working in unison as one. The matrix, you're dealing with probability versus control, intuition versus logic, or should I say, how they complement each other, destiny/design. When you place them beside the five quantum theory and Val Valerian's multi-dimensional model, you get this Morpheus, Tahuti, Orunmila archetype kind of acting as the advisor to the seeker, kind of like the Haru, right? Shango. A king always needs advice. A king always needs the council of elders. Otherwise, they might make poor judgments. In the Yoruba tradition, the king didn't just do whatever he wanted to do. He had a council of elders he had to adhere to. Same with Kemet. The pharaoh doesn't just do whatever he wants to do. He has to adhere to a council of elders. Now, each and every one of us is connected to an inner council. We're also connected to the Tahuti faculty, or the Orunmila aspect that's also connected to Ella. So when you open yourself to get guidance from that aspect of the universe, you'll find yourself in the proper places at the proper times. But the thing about it is that we have been taught to doubt ourselves and doubt being able to receive the right information. Now, the Morpheus character, right, was more than just a character. He basically represents these metaphysical principles that govern how consciousness navigate a simulated or patterned reality. And you're going to notice that this same story is found in Star Wars, right? Haru means one who rises above, and Shango is known as the Orisha that lives in the sky or on top of the highest tree, tallest tree. Haru means one who is above. Then you got Luke Skywalker. Again, that same story of a man who was avenging his father or saving his father, who was actually dismembered, and he brings his pieces back together, or helps him bring his pieces back together in various forms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we also had to bring our pieces back together that were ripped apart, thrown, and scattered. And wherever a part was placed, a shrine was erected. So therefore, all the various religions of the world represent a different interpretation of one common truth. Unfortunately, people get their hands on them and they see that they can use beliefs to put people into a form of bondage or dependence, ruling through fear. False evidence appearing real as they break it down.
Yes, sir.
So the architect represents the left brain of the matrix, the part of reality built on rules, equations, and predictable outcomes. Now, if you remember, when Neo walks into the room, he runs into a man wearing a white suit that kind of looked like, Colonel Sanders, right?
Yeah, I remember that part.
That's the architect. Remember, according to the Gnostic tradition, the architect is called the demiurge, and he thought he was the one and true God. Remember? Remember? And his mother shouted from heaven and humbled him and told him, hey, you need to just chill. Yadobio, aka Jehovah.
Yeah, we tapped into that last show.
Right. So again, he's the designer, he's the architect, right? Every anomaly must be balanced, every deviation must be corrected, every choice must be reduced to a probability curve. So he is the embodiment of determinism, that everything can be calculated, predicted, and controlled. Right? So this is Valerian's third density control architecture. And that is the agents, right? Like Wilson, Agent Smith and the cronies that were with him, representing self-correcting programs and the subconscious mind's rigid patterns, and the binary structure of the E5 before interpretation. The architects, or the architect, is part of the universe that says, here are the rules, here's the structure, here's the code, right? So in that aspect, he is the third sphere on the Kabbalah, or the tree of life, called Binah. That corresponds with Seker and Baba Loaye and Angel Zakiel. So he is a cosmic engineer, but he also has no understanding, meaning, purpose, or destiny himself, in and of himself. Okay. Now I'm talking about the character. The narrowing down to the character itself, not necessarily Orisha or an angel. I talked about this because there's different dimensions to everything that I just spoke about. The oracle is the opposite. Okay. Now she is the intuitive program. She's the right brain of the matrix, the realm of intuition, emotion, possibility, and emergent outcomes. She doesn't control the system, but she understands the system. She reads the flow of choices, the subtle shifts in consciousness, and the way human beings bend probability through belief and intention. She is the embodiment of free will, right? In a sense. Remember, she's still part of the matrix, but not as the chaos, but as a living pattern. So again, we go back to E5 divination as the binary system, interpreted through consciousness. We talk about the quantum field that responds to emotion and intention, Oshun and Arumala's energy. And we talk about Arumala as the interpreter of the Odu, of the destiny, aspect of destiny. Odu also being the feminine aspect of creation itself, and the matrix, Ma'at, the matriarch, and so on. You have this universe, this material universe is necessary so that spirit can express itself through form. That's how you learn. Otherwise, you remain undifferentiated. And there's no purpose in knowing everything and not being experienced anything. So the oracle is part of the universe that says, here's the pattern, here's the potential, and here also is the path. She doesn't necessarily predict the future. She reads the probability fields with many possibilities. So let's look at these characters. Let's look at the matrix. Let's look at the architect. Let's look at the oracle, right? Architect builds the matrix. Oracle teaches you how to navigate it. Architect represents the fixed code. The oracle represents the living code, because she reminds Neo that the universe is not necessarily fixed. He knocks over the vase. She said, who's really going to get your noodle is, would you have done it if I hadn't said anything? The architect represents determinism. The oracle represents choice. The architect represents structure, and the oracle brings forth or brings out meaning. So this duality, this is what mirrors the structure of Ifa, the I Ching, and other forms of binary divination. Now, again, let's talk more about Morpheus, Neo, and the brain's electrical impulses. When Morpheus tells Neo that the matrix is made of electrical impulses interpreted by the brain, he's pointing out this same duality, the impulses, which are raw data, equaling the architect, and the interpretation, right, connected to the oracle. Neo becomes the one, only when he integrates both. Remember, Matthew 6:22 in the Helios Biblia, aka Sun Book, it says, when the power is in the eye, and when the eyes are made single, then the body will be filled with light. It says that in the Bible, right? Okay. So he sees the code, he understands the choice. This mirrors Val Valerian's teaching that awakening requires shifting from third density limitation as the fixed code to higher density awareness, which is living consciousness. Okay. Now, I'd also mention something else too, and that is, and I want to make this clear, there's the intuitive aspect. Now, a lot of us, when we got into metaphysics, a lot of us learned to demonize the left brain hemisphere, which I think is also a mistake, because you want to unify them. You don't want to demonize any part of them. The reason why, though, is because of how they incorrectly taught us how to use the left brain in public school and the other institutions in which we grow in the sub-matrix called the United States. Now, the oracle is the intuition, the higher self in so many ways, the Orientu, and the part that senses destiny and possibility. But the battle between them is the battle between conditioning versus awakening, and fear versus purpose, limitation versus expansion, and so on. This is why Leo has to visit both. You cannot transcend the matrix by rejecting structure in the tree of life. So according to Shechem or Shechem, this is where you have Seker. In the Kabbalistic terms, this is Binah, which means understanding. Now it's ruled by the planet Saturn, right? And there's a whole another topic that gets into this. The planet Saturn plays a whole role in maintaining the structure within the matrix. You transcend it by understanding both the code and it. The synthesis, Ifa is the bridge, or I Ching being the bridge between the oracle and the architect. We got the oracle as a living example of how these two forces will work together. The old do or the fix are their transformative patterns that continue to shift and transform. They're not necessarily fixed, right? But the interpretation is fluid. You have the intuitive, destiny-based oracle. You have the Babalao, who is the navigator in many ways. He acts as Morpheus. So Morpheus, you might could say, was Neo's Babalao. He is the seeker, learning to see the code behind their whole entire life, their whole entire existence. The architect builds the world, the oracle reveals the path. Ifa teaches you how to walk it. Okay? So another thing too, you know, as far as the oracle showing you the way, you look at the word oracle, everything around you is an oracle. How? Because when you look around you, you see arrangements of things. If you learn how to read the universe, all you're doing is basically doing the macro of what you're doing when you miniaturize it on a map with D Lagoon or the Opwele or the Yikin or the Ikin, right? When you look around you, if you learn how to read the universe, that's how you're listening and interpreting the words of the divine. That's the meta. That's the meta. That's reading the hieroglyphics, which is interpreted by the commission priest in the form of symbols. Sometimes animal parts, right? Parts of a door, you know, a vulture made the ah sound, the leg makes the B sound, and so on. Now, when the priest would study this is activating two brain hemispheres. Both brain hemispheres is being activated when they read the metal netter. Because you have your determinative, which is the symbol, then you got the letters, which make up the tone. So the way you know which tone is also brought about by the determinative, which is on the other side of the letters of the hieroglyphics that represent the letters. I'll give you an example. When you spell the word unk, right? Unk is only spelled with unk. It's a water wave, and then it's a placenta that makes the k sound. But next to it is the symbol of the unk. You can actually use the symbol of the unk to express the word unk itself, but the letters is NKH. The letters is the water wave and the placenta. That makes the k sound. And determinative is the unk, right? That's the symbol next to it. You see how that works? If you spell the word for God, it's netter, right? So there's the water wave making the N sound. Then you got a loaf of bread, makes the T sound. And then you have the fish's mouth with the mouth making the R sound. That's the actual word. Next to it is the symbol of, some people think it's a flag, some think it's an axe. I'll go along with axe. But that's the determinative. That's not the actual word, but it can be used as the word by itself. The actual word is spelled with the other hieroglyphics. So you got two parts of the brain working here. And also, when you're writing them, you're basically be working with both brain hemispheres. See, the whole system of ancient Kemet was based on the unification of both brain hemispheres, right? And the higher and lower. We call that Samadhi Tawi, which sounds a lot like Samadhi when it comes to yoga tradition.
And masculine and feminine.
Indeed. So the masculine and feminine energy, that's why every netter always has a netert. There's always a feminine and a masculine counterbalance, right? Okay, that's why we call them complementary. They're not just dual opposites, they're complementary opposites. And they work in unison and harmony, and they have to maintain and hold together creation, or shall I say manifestation, because you can't have left without right, not in this world. So then we get back to our probability, which is the language we use to describe uncertainty. And it measures how strongly one outcome is favored over another when we don't or cannot know exactly what is going to happen. Instead of giving guarantees, probability gives degrees of expectation, a way to quantify possibilities. So when we're doing the readings, we're looking at the probability field, and we're looking at the possible outcome of an event, or we're looking at the outcome of an event, but you're also given a remedy. to change that outcome. Am I making sense? You're given a remedy to change the outcome and a set of things that you need to do. Sometimes, though, it's not so much giving fruit to an Orisha or feeding your ancestors. It may simply be like you need to go ahead and get that paperwork turned back in, or you need to focus on your health and so on. Okay. So a lot of it is about getting back into alignment and getting back into balance. What did Luke Skywalker? Luke Skywalker was actually the Haru of that trilogy. Not only did he fight to defend his father, but here's something else a lot of people don't pay attention to. Darth Vader did bring balance to the Force. After he got done, there was only he got rid of the Emperor, right? He got rid of the Emperor, and then there was his son. His son represented Haru. His son was able to show love. He threw the Emperor down the shaft. He brought balance to the Force at that point because it was the love between father and son. Luke Skywalker avenged his father. And keep in mind, there was always 2 Sith. After he got done, there was only like 2 Jedi.
Listen, look. I don't want to interrupt, but it's burning me up, boy. But listen, so all we're doing, you're breaking down and personifying the Asarian drama. Shout out to the tribe in the comments because they going ham in there. I'm trying to keep up with them and you at the same time because they're dropping heat in there too. But that's dope because look, we've seen this story many a times, and one of the most prolific and powerful versions of that is the Lion King. Like that complements, you know what I'm saying, the same personification of the Asarian drama is in the Lion King, it's in the Star Wars series. Oh, and by the way, it's in your Bible when you talk about the whole Jesus of Nazareth and the 3 wise men, when you talk about Orion's Oracle and the stars of Sirius. Anyway, but go ahead, Bob. I don't want to go ahead, but go ahead.
Indeed. And what is in Jesus? They identify with being the lion. There's the Lion of Judah. There's Leo. There's the Son. Again, you're dealing with taking on the persona of the sun, something in which we speak about in solarization. So there's a reflection of how the mind interacts with the uncertainty principle. When you make a prediction, you choose a path or interpret a situation, and you're unconsciously estimating probabilities, okay? And it's based on experience, pattern recognition, and intuition. In that sense, probability is not just math, it's a model of how reality unfolds. Okay. The issue that the architect keeps on running into is that he is trying to duplicate this reality, but reality is not fixed. This is why he could not get rid of the anomaly. You go to school and you learn that all things can be measured with facts, numbers, and figures, but it hasn't allowed you to really develop the intuitive process. So we don't achieve balance with the intuitive. I mean, you have to achieve balance with the intuitive and cognitive principles to be whole in how you deliver things in life. So once again, you got this probability, you become a creature once you weave it into the idea of the matrix, E5 binary system, quantum theory, and the multi-dimensional frameworks we've been exploring. Okay, it's everyday language in school or in college and everything else, but we don't run around and talk about probability amongst the homies. That's not how that works. But in deeper sense, probability is the shape of potential and a structure of what could happen before it collapses into what does happen. So you're given a certain window of time to take care of business, to do what the Oracle has told you that you need to do. Okay. So a lot of times it's that you have about 16 days to get this done. Otherwise, what you don't want to see manifest is going to manifest that way. All right, that's an example. Now, it's the architect of the unseen. It's the field of possibilities that exists before choice, intention, character, and consequences, or should I say, consciousness being narrowed into a single lived outcome. Now, I want to talk a little about something, too. I want to get a little bit more about the characters, okay? Because we talked plenty about the Oracle, but there's another character that I think is very important. That is the Merovingian. The Merovingian is a character that has a conversation. Actually, there was a group in historically, there was a group in France that were like a bloodline called the Merovingian bloodline, and they held the power in that region for quite some time. Well, there's a character in the Matrix called the Merovingian. It's a scene is central to everything we've been weaving together, and this entire philosophy is based on causality. And it's the counterweight of the Oracle's philosophy of probability, and the tension between these two ideas, the same tension. All right. He's the one that gave the girl the cake. Okay. If you remember. All right. He's the one that had that led the two programs that were identical twins, and they had the locks and everything else. It represented duality that Neo would have to face and everything else. So this goes back into multidimensionality in the matrix metaphysics. So when the Merovingian lectures Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity, right, when they're outside the restaurant, he's talking about causality, right? He's expressing the worldview of the architect's side of the matrix. There's no escaping reason, no denying purpose, because if we both know without purpose, we would not exist. This is pure determinism, though, right? It's not wrong. It's just from the aspect of determinism, the belief that every effect has a cause and every action has a reason, and nothing happens without a prior condition. In other words, causality is the rigid code of the matrix, and this aligns with we talked about the third aspect of third density as controlled, rule-bound environment, the subconscious mind's automatic programs, and the architect's deterministic worldview, the fixed binary structure of life in which we have learned to live from the left brain perspective. The Merovingian is basically saying, you think you have a choice, or you think you have choice, but you're just acting out your program, right? That's why he disagreed with Morpheus, who said it was about choice, basically. And the Merovingian said, no, choice is determined by those with power. You don't have no power because you don't understand causality. So he represents the voice of a previous system. So you have this Morpheus versus Merovingian. There's the faith versus determinism. And as you can see, Morpheus had put his faith into what the oracle had to say, right? While Merovingian was saying, well, this is the logic behind it all. So Morpheus says everything begins with choice, right? And Merovingian says, no, it does not. This is but the oracle's worldview is that it does. The worldview of probability, free will, and consciousness influencing outcomes. So in that scene, you have causality, determination, and fixed code. You have Morpheus, choice, belief, and consciousness, and you got Neo, the bridge between the two. And then you got Trinity. The emotion is probability to the action. Because you see, there's always the third aspects. There's the future, there's the past, and there's the present. The present is a gift. And when you live in the moment, and when you're able to integrate everything and live in the moment, you are the one. And you have won. What have you won? You have won the gift of the present.
Whoa, 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 whoa. It's been a long time since gotta pump them brakes. I'll throw it in reverse. What that?
Yes.
Can you get that
Yes,
to us
Yoda.
1 or 2 more times and then slow it down a little bit? I'm telling you, I got it, but I'm sure there's some other people that want to hear it again, and some people that might didn't get it all the way. So can you say it louder again for the people in the back? One more time, brother. One more time.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I wanted to acknowledge Yoda. That's true. Yoda did spit that game heavy. Yoda was actually the Tahuti of the Jedi. You know, Mace Windu was like the Harakudi.
That's what we talk about in the chat. Like the comment, we're going, and there's a few questions. I didn't want to break stride, but when we get a chance, there's several questions that I starred that I wanted to share because they, like I said, the tribe going heavy in the comments and mainly mostly about Tahuti. But I wanted to hear that one more time if you don't mind before we keep going, because that was heavy. Can you drop that one more time for the people in the back?
All right. Well, basically, the Trinity represents the past, present, and future. There's the future, there's the past, there's the present. And once you become one with the moment, you have won. Not only have you become the one, but you have won. And what have you won? You have won the gift, and that gift is the present. This is the immortality in which we're seeking, the eternal present. That's why I spoke before about the simultaneity of past, present, and future. That's why I says, I'm yesterday, today, and tomorrow. No mortal man sees past my veil. You see, because if you're stuck in the past, or if you're caught in the future of fears, you're not able to integrate now. So you're identifying with that which is finite as opposed to the eternal present. Now, I'm not saying don't plan on paying your bills. I'm saying don't get caught up on worries and be so focused on the possibility of something going wrong that you can't live now. You can't win because your energies are scattered. The reason why your destiny is aligned is because you have found a way to be at one, that is atonement or at one-ment with the specific time that we call the present, in the state that you're in when you're in your zone. So let's say you're playing the violin and you begin to start going crazy. You start preaching like the preacher because he's starting to channel because he's aligned with the oneness. You see what I mean? He's in the eternal present. The secret of having access to unlimited power is being in the eternal present. That's why when you're having a whole bunch of thoughts go through your head, don't try to stop them, ignore them, and just see how you feel. They call that meditation, when you ignore your thoughts. Don't imagine them going into a dumpster. Don't imagine them being shot down with a rifle. Just let your thoughts just go and ignore them. That's how you do it.
That's powerful though. That's deep. And real quick, I just want to because I'm listening and I know it all resonates with me, but there's certain things too that I feel like how they all kind of tie in, because when you talk about being able to be present, in the moment, right? That's something I'm very big on. I just said this yesterday and the last few days, actually, about not living in the past, not worrying about or focusing on things that happened in the past, even the good things. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my brother. We was talking last night. We was talking about people who hold on to old trophies, you know what I'm saying, or old accomplishments and things of that nature. Don't get it twisted. I feel like anything that we achieve and we accomplish is worthy of being grateful for and worthy of being happy. However, me personally, I'm not going to take the scoreboard from yesterday's game or from last year or 20 or 5 years ago, you know what I'm saying, successes, and apply them to they mean something now. Yeah, they cool for then, but they don't really mean anything to me now like they should, because at the end of the day, I got to focus on getting a better score and a better scoreboard outcome today, and then also trying to figure out how I can get better and be better, do better tomorrow. And so when you talk about the past, present, and the future, that's powerful, because I think if you go back to the know thyself, you know what I'm saying, parable or whatever you want to call it, the speech of know thyself, right? When you talk about past, present, and future, if you can take those and internalize them, and then you look at as above, so below, as within, so without, and you bring all of them together, now I feel like you're looking at, what is it called, the tetrahedron, when you have the ultimate, you have all the different triangles and the angles coming all at one time, that's when I feel like you're taking it to a whole nother level now. Now you're going really into the meta of the metaphysics, because you're taking all elements and all angles and then submerging all of them together simultaneously, right?
Indeed. We're going to bring together a piece of Asir, piece of Abatallah, or Rishanlah. We're bringing those pieces back together. You see, we got to bring our pieces back together so we can have peace, as opposed to being in pieces. So when even when you're enjoying, making love to your woman, if your mind ain't there, she's going to feel it. She's going to know that something ain't right.
Yeah.
So when you're present, right, and the woman, that's the ultimate test for you to be in the present moment. You have to learn to be in the present moment, especially when it comes to when you're interacting with sex. Through that in which you experience enlightenment. You see, orgasm is a total freedom from ego. There is no ego when you're having an orgasm. You understand? The reason why a lot of people don't reach it is because of fears and a lack of knowledge of their body and all that. Some of it has to do with things we're putting in our body, but some of it is mental. An orgasm is equivalent to enlightenment when it comes to those who understand Tantra, living orgasmically. When you're under a state of being orgasmic, you become hyper-suggestible, and this is when you can actually program yourself with the things that you want to see manifest in that point of orgasm with your partner. So when you get with your partner, now Mantak Chia has this microcosmic orbit. I was instructed to not focus on the orbit because it can take you out of the present moment because you're trying to visualize things. And know this to Mantak Chia. However, when I decided to experience being in the moment, everything was just so much more intense. It's a total, complete letting go, not holding on, but a letting go, you see. And that's when you can expand your energy and your consciousness. But if you're always like this, you see, your auric field is constantly in a state of contraction. Ire is expansion, Osobo is contraction. It's also holding on to the placenta, EB. So it's about letting go, you see. Now, the Merovingian also has another scene that, you know, I want to talk about too, right? Let's get this out the way. You got programming versus free will, determinism versus probability, fixed code versus living consciousness. So the Merovingian, what he basically represents is the part of reality that says you are bound to your past, okay? The Oracle is saying that you can choose your future. You have a choice. See, so E5 represents the system that says, here's the pattern, now choose how to walk it, you know? And this is where your determination, you need to go in this direction if you want to avoid this, that, and the other. And here's the tools for you to utilize in order for you to get there. Neo represents the human being learning to navigate the matrix with awareness. So you're becoming mindful and you have conscious awareness and you understand that you're doing these things. You're not manifesting unintentionally. You begin to have an intention behind your ability to manifest. So there's this cake scene with the Merovingian. They used to, and this is like one of the most misunderstood parts of the Matrix Reloaded. That's the name of this particular movie. Once you look at it through the lenses that we've been using, like probability, causality, subconscious programming, E5's binary system, and Oracle versus Architect, it becomes one of the most revealing scenes in the entire trilogy. And that is, it's not about sex or humor. It's a demonstration of how the Matrix manipulates unconscious impulses, how causality operates beneath awareness, and how beings like the Merovingian exploit the code of human desire to influence outcomes. This is what the establishment do to everyday people. And by the way, the cake scene, how many different type of products that we continue to put into our system knowing that they're not good for us and they continue to screw us up, mess up your memory and everything else, right? There's something in certain types of soft drinks that will mess your memory up and cause you to have all kind of bladder issues, let alone having all kind of issues with your reproductive area, causing men to have ED and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, keep in mind that what you're putting in your body, again, you're downloading information. When you're eating, you're downloading information into your personal mainframe. So you got to be aware, you got to be mindful, even things that you eat. And I'm not trying to preach anybody about diet. Just become aware of the fact that there's different constitutions. You got to learn your personal constitution and basically where you are in the matrix and what to eat, what not to eat, what to wear, what not to wear. You know, sometimes you'll get a divination that'll say, hey, you can't wear red, you can't wear black, and so on, right?
Yeah.
There's reasons behind that. And if you do, then there's certain things that you have to do to correct the imbalance.
Baba, real quick, because I know we're running up on time, but I do want to hopefully get into some of the questions from the tribe. But I got a question in regards to that, because that's powerful and that resonates with me, because there's been many times when I'm on the mat and I give divinations and I give consultations to people and I give them the taboos. Like, so let's just say, for example, you might not be able to eat fish for like a week, 2-3 weeks or whatever, or you might not be able to wear black for like a week, 2-3 weeks, you know, whatever the case may be, because, you know, each Odu has a specific taboos that come along with whatever is going to that person's, you know what I'm saying, message or what have you. Can you speak to the significance of being obedient to the messages that you get from the oracle versus if you choose to like just do what you want to do after you have been blessed or gifted this particular divine insight that is really given to you specifically for you and only you to get you on the path to becoming or growing into the best version of you? Can you speak to that for the tribe for me, please?
You could be, yeah, if you do what you want to do, you could be steering yourself away from the blessings that are supposed to come to you. Okay? There's reasons why some people are not supposed to wear red any old time they want to. or they can only wear red in certain events. And that's because they may be susceptible to going through transpossession. And red might do that to them. Or they may be told, hey, you can't wear plaid. Why? Because when you wear plaid, it creates confusion in you. Now, of course, you have free will. You can do what you want, but it's telling you to avoid these circumstances because it may cause you to not be able to align you with your destiny. And Ifa is about you becoming more of who and what you actually are and fulfilling the contract that was made before you even incarnated. So if you eat certain things when you were told not to, you're putting the information into you that can actually slow you down or rob you of your ashe. If you're told that there's certain things that you cannot even do in the bedroom, then you have to correct the imbalance if you continue to do it anyway. You see what I mean? It's not necessarily because these are cookie cutter rules. It deals with everybody with their own specific destiny. That's how it becomes holistic. Same if you study Ayurveda, right? Everybody, you got your Vata, Ptah, and so on, right? And Kapha, right? So if you're Vata, they tend to be skinnier people, and Ptah seems to be more in the middle, and then you got Kapha, who tend to be people who are more weighty, right? Well, there's certain diets that is given to these people for each of what they call I'm looking for the word, and it escapes me right now. Anyway, that particular pattern. There's yeah, I was talking about Ayurveda, but pretty much with the Ita, the same thing. You know, it's the patterns that you're given because it corresponds with your specific destiny. Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean
like your life playbook, like your own personal encyclopedia or dictionary, or you know what I'm saying, playbook, like, because it's designed specifically for you, just like a fingerprint. Nobody else on the planet is going to have the same exact Ita, or what do you call that, the one you're talking about, how you say it?
And I was talking about as far as this reflection on Ayurveda. It's just another example.
Got you. Yeah.
Why you want to live a certain way.
Yes, sir.
And also to remind you that these traditions are not cookie cutter. They serve the purpose of the individual, each having a collective participation in this life. You participate in the village, but you have your own point of reference and the things that you specifically are supposed to do. Because remember, God is experiencing through us. God will experience this through one person, and experience that through another person.
Yeah.
That's how that works. So somebody has to be you, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that brought me back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking about like Neo and Morpheus and the agents. And there's an exercise. Shout out to Tony Vortex from the Meta Center, Dr. Deborah Blair's predecessor, who's kind of been taking over since Dr. Blair transitioned. You might new to him, but there's a book that he wrote, which I love. It's a powerful book, but it breaks down the mind and the components of the mind. But one of the things that I can't remember which book I read in, but there's a difference between I and me. There's a difference between the voice that speaks that you all hear, that you hear, Baba, from the voice that I hear internally, you know what I'm saying, inside of me. Can you kind of break down how that component parallel, like how that is like comparable, or how it makes sense to what we're talking about in regards to the matrix? Because everybody has multiple voices. At least I don't know how many other people, I got a lot, but what's the difference between I and me, or the audible voice and the internal voice? Like, because are they the same or are they not the same?
Well, I never really looked at it like that, but the way I look at it is in terms of integration. You see what I mean? Because if the I and the me are having an argument, then there means that there has to be some type of personal integrity that needs to take place. Because it's about alignment. You see what I mean? Now, when you get into Sufism, some schools of thought talk about eliminating the I because of the separation it creates from Allah, right? I know of an elder who is a master, spiritual master in his own community. He never refers to himself in person. He'll say his name. For instance, and I'm not going to necessarily just put his name out there, but let's say I say, well, Khepra Ptah says this and that, right? Or A lot of members of the Asaracist Society will say my person, because they're making the differentiation between the personality, which is not the entire self, right? Or not the true self, as opposed to their true self, which is the indwelling God. Now there's your person, right? The person is an aspect of you that has come into being through survival or through circumstances, traumas, and so on, or whatever astrological configuration that you was born under, and so on. But the personality, the persona, is not you. Otherwise, you would not be able to split it into 2 and 3 and 4 personalities. There's a woman by the name of Sybil. There was a book about a woman who had 16 different personalities. And a lot of times these personalities split and develop through trauma. The word personality is connected to the word person. Person means through sound. Persona means a mask. So the person is the mask that you wear. So perhaps there's the I and the me. Perhaps he was talking about one being the authentic self and one being a mask. Now, when you deal with Kabbalah, or you deal with the idea of being able to connect with a spiritual force and Orisha and so on, there's some magical traditions where you take on the God form to represent the personality you would like to have in a given moment, or eliminating aspects of your personality, like when they do with these 72 demons, which represents aspects of the self that they would like to exercise and vanish. So they may draw a circle and call upon the name of that entity and do rituals to banish that, which is actually a part of themselves they would like to purify. It's a form of alchemy to a degree. So there's the me, myself, and I. I see about having me, myself, and I, another trinity, to work in alignment. That's the way I look at that. I don't believe necessarily that everyone should rush to get rid of the ego. I say transcend the ego. When I mentioned about the sex, is that ego totally is out the window when you reach orgasm. You don't care about whatever faces you make or anything like that, because ego is not in control. You see what I mean? It's about the idea of saying, okay, I'm going to allow my personal to get out the way and just be in this moment in an intense way, if I'm making sense. So it transcends the idea of having a separation of the me, myself, and I, and deal with the integration of self. This is the idea of bringing the pieces of Osiris or Osir back into oneness, being part of the eternal present. The present is indeed the present, indeed. So going back to proving his philosophy, right? Where he was trying to prove his philosophy by saying that the choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without. That's what the Merovingian was saying, right? So he's actually telling Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity that most choices humans make are not conscious at all. They're responses to stimuli, to programming, to impulses that they don't control, right? Conditioned responses built on top of false beliefs. Now here's the thing.
Woo, that sounds like America.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah. We see in the harlot fall. We see in Babylon has fallen, but because it was built off of not only false beliefs, it was built off of stolen legacy. Shout out to George Jim James, because I want to give that book a shout out while you were talking about when we were talking about ancient Kemet. And you know, but Stolen Legacy is another powerful book, family, especially for those in the comments. But yeah, that sounds like America, because she was built off of false pretenses, stolen land, stolen property, stolen people, stolen goods, you name it. So now she's reaping what she sowed, and we all sitting here eating popcorn watching it.
Indeed, the program has to shut down because it's built on top of a false premise. It's built on top of a damn virus. Okay?
Yeah.
So therefore, there's viruses. You see?
Parasitical goddamn controllers of that virus.
Indeed. So the program's got to shut down. It's inevitable because it's built on too many false premises. They have to get out the way and let it crash. They can't stop it. The only thing they can do is find a way to totally change it, but it cannot remain the same. It's inevitable that it crashes, that it dies, okay? But when something dies, something else is reborn.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about also too many of Americans have eaten the cake and have been downloaded with a pleasure stimuli. Too many have eaten the Merovingian's cake, right? So Neo says your brain makes it real, or your mind makes it real. The Merovingian is saying, I can make your brain fire up however I want to. That's some of these corporations. Well, we don't care about these people out here. We just want to make a profit. We know that it's going to mess with them. Hey, pharmaceutical companies only go so far, and that you can't
tech
do. You see?
companies, the social media companies,
Yeah,
the e-commerce company. I ain't gonna mention names, but I feel like everybody on here is intelligent enough to know exactly who we're talking about. So that's real.
Indeed. So that's how they keep the establishment, aka Matrix, afloat in the way in which it is behaving. The cake scene is a metaphor of how the subconscious program works in real life. It triggers fire, it triggers something within you. It activates a pattern, and a reaction unfolds. The person believes they chose it, though. This is exactly how the Agent Smith character possesses people in the Matrix. You see what I mean? How people close to you turn into an Agent Smith.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people are not unplugged, so they're susceptible to basically becoming an Agent Smith.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people are, because you got to think we're products of our environments, right? So not everybody has the ability or the wherewithal to be able to listen to source. Because I'm gonna speak for me and me only. I know that there's a lot of voices in my head, right? And I know some of them I feel like are totally connected to my experience, whether it be my Ori, my mind's eye, whatever you want to call it, the Jedi, whatever you want to call it. And then the person who, navigates the body. There's two different distinct ones, but then there's also other ones that all have, I feel like, a resonance within. But there's one that I know that no matter what, whenever that one appears or makes its presence known, I shut up and fall in line because I know that one's never been wrong. It's never been off. It's never led me astray. We all have that ability because to me, shout out to OJ Yemi, to me, that's no different than the umbilical cord that we all were nourished through while we were in the womb. So if we all tap into ourselves, learning to know ourselves, know thyself, learning to think about and process the experience of life. I don't care if you've been here for a year or 101 years. There's always been some sort of innate feeling or connection to some sort of energy, frequency, or some sort of communication that we all have felt that was above all the rest. So if we can tap into that and really trust and cultivate and nourish that relationship, that to me is the connection to the creator. When you have that connection to the creator, you are Neo because you are Neo, the one, but you also have the ability to be ambidextrous with being the all within the one or the one within the all, period. That is the connection of God, the universal prime creator, the great God in heaven, period, bar none. If you listen to that, if you tune into that, there's nothing to worry about with this experience we're having right now because you already know that you're infinite, you're limitless, you are immortal. There is nothing that can destroy you. Period.
Facts. Facts.
My bad. I had to let that loose.
Oh no. Hey, I'm honored to be a guest, so the thing about it is too, a lot of the voices that we hear inside of us, some of those are coming from our ancestors.
Sure. Facts.
So some of these are voices that need to be elevated. Some of these are voices that are coming from guidance. Some of our ancestors have been enlightened and they want to come back and teach us something or finish work through us. So all these things are to be considered. This is why when we look into the oracle, we're determining on whether this is the influence of an ancestor, an Orisha, the Ori, and so on. But it's all about alignment, you see. And also getting the various aspects of yourself to become agreeable so you can focus and go to where you're destined to go in life.
Facts.
So to become the one, Neo must transcend all of his self-imposed limitations. You see, got to see the code. He has to understand the pattern, right? He has to read the Odu. He has to resist programming like the Merovingian and the architect. He has to also master his impulses.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and align with his Ori in destiny. So the Merovingian says, if you don't master your impulses, someone else will. And that's what happens. Then you have the key maker. The key maker is one of the most important metaphysical ideas in the matrix as well. Okay. You know, because you need the key maker to have the right keys to open the door. Sound familiar? So he's not just a character, he's the embodiment of access, pathways, and dimensional choice.
Sound like that shoe too.
Yes, yes. And he stays in close proximity with the oracle. Well, you know, you do your Opwele, then one side of Opwele represents Eshu, the other represents Orunmila. So therefore, Orunmila and Eshu is always in close proximity. So the key maker access to high dimensional pathways. The key maker's entire purpose is to open doors that are not visible to just ordinary perception. And these doors lead to back channels of the matrix, hidden corridors, and alternative routes, shortcuts between layers of code, and pathways that bypass normal causality. So this is exactly how this is supposed to function, right? Now, each Odu also is a door. That's why every Odu has his Eshu. Okay? So it's a pattern that opens a specific pathway through destiny, probability, and experience.
Oh, wait a minute. Baba, I'm sorry to interrupt, but wait a minute, because now we really, my spirit is on me, but now where does the booth and the phone tie into this? Because to me, I feel like you're creating some sort of pathway where it has to be some sort of access code or some sort of way that you got to get in and out of the matrix. Well, what you're talking about, where do we go when we talk about the movie and everything we discussed, and then we talk about how they could only get in and out if they had access to that landline, and how does that work with what we're talking about today?
That's the crossroads. That's Eshu. That's Eshu's domain. Okay? It's but a place where you communicate as well as being a travel between realms. Hey, if you got issues, right? You even take all your sins to the crossroads. That's laying your sins at the foot of the cross from our version. But every crossroad is a section where the energies of Eshu is available. You even got a crossroad. You even got a nerve center that crisscrosses in the back of your neck. And right over here in this area in the back of the head, there's Eshu Nipako. Eshu lives at the gate in the back of the head, between the nape and the neck, back of the neck, where the head and the bone over there connects. Eshu dwells there. They call Eshu the divine force that lives in the back of the profound head. So yes, you know, you're not getting away from the crossroads. And it said that if that ligament is cut, communication will be thrown off. So there you go. You got communication, and you also got your own internal portal that you carry around with you everywhere you go. You have a portal here, and then you go and leave an offering at the crossroads so that things will open up for you, and then you communicate. So we're always doing interdimensional travel, and that's our community. That's our phone booth right there.
Real quick, Baba, because they download now. Shout out to Bone Thugs and Harmony, because all I could hear as you were saying is boom, 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 boom. Me at the crossroads. Man, I miss my Uncle Child now, because that is the crossroad between the ancestral realm and the physical realm. Like that. So okay. I'm gonna get out of the way. Go ahead, Baba. Go ahead.
All right. So, so this is why the priests, they don't just predict, they unlock the correct path for the seeker. Yeah. So the key maker is basically like the Ifa priest of the Matrix. By the way, Eshu is also a Babalao. He was initiated into Ifa Barumala. So he's a Babalao too. So he knows the mysteries as well. Okay. He has the keys and the mysteries. That's a bad brother right there. So untouchable. The key maker, right? He knows which door to opens, which leads to which outcome, which path collapses, which probability, which route bypasses which trap, and which sequence opens which destiny. And he's the navigator of hidden architecture. That's the key maker in the Matrix. So the Merovingian keeps the key maker in prison because whoever controls access controls destiny, right? This mirrors oppressive systems, controlling spiritual knowledge, subconscious programming, blocking higher awareness, and the architect's attempt to limit human evolution. The way trauma locks people out of their own potential. That's why you always got this traumatic stuff. They always got you watching news about traumas and the fear of going through traumas and things that happen to you at birth, right? Pharmaceuticals, they're not trying to heal you of those things. They just, pick at your mind and stuff like that, and psychoanalysis and all that. Yeah, throw that shit in the trash. Anyway, the thing about it is that if you're not tapping into your divine potential, right, and understanding to be what it means to be at one, we got to focus on reaching within, because there's a whole universe within you. Everything around us is a reflection from that which is within. That's what we're talking about. Indeed. And like brother, thank you, brother Nkosi. He talks about quantum entanglement and the connection to Oriyapako. You're also talking about the fact that your consciousness is connected to everything out there, really, because there's no separation from that which is being observed. This way also falls into the concept of quantum entanglement. If you're connected with someone, you'll feel their energy, no matter how far on what side of the planet that they're located, because of the quantum. Psychologically, you can sense when someone that you love is in danger, and you can pray for that person, and they will have results no matter where they're at. Distance and separation, it only applies to the mind. It's an illusion of the mind. It's necessary for us to experience our individuality. Again, the Merovingian represents causality as control. The keymaker, though, represents choice as access. So this is the same tension we saw earlier. We talked about the oracle versus the architect and everything else. You see, so it gets pretty deep. Valerian describes reality as multidimensional training environment, or
Oh boy, I don't know what happened, family, but technology in. I'm gonna keep on riding, and hopefully we can get Baba back in this thing. But I'm gonna pick up right where he dropped off, because shout out to Kashita. I saw your comment, and what's dope about what you said in that comment is that in that video, that was a video that he actually filmed. He filmed that video in Brazil. I had just pulled it up while you was after you sent that comment, but Mike filmed that video in Brazil, and it's one of the biggest, I forgot the name of the festival, but it's a big music festival that he intentionally filmed that video for, about They Don't Care About Us. And he was representing pretty much Ifa and Isheshe. Like, he was giving shout out and homage to the tradition through that video, They Don't Really Care About Us, which was filmed in Brazil in 1990. It was filmed in the festival in Rio de Janeiro in, I want to say, I think 2004. I'm sorry, not 2004. 1995, I think. I think Baba's back.
Oh,
okay, Baba, you here?
Yeah, look like
yeah, that's crazy. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, nah, it was crazy because I saw what happened, like it dropped off, but it's funny because I was somebody, Kashita was saying that Michael Jackson wore a shirt that says Odun in one of his videos, but that was the song They Don't Really Care About Us video, which was filmed in Brazil during one of the biggest, I forgot the name of the festival that's filmed in Brazil. I mean, that's held in Brazil every year. And he intentionally filmed the video for that song, They Don't Really Care About Us. And it was paying homage to the Isheshe tradition too, because he had the drums. Like, it was dope. It was dope. So the fact that she brought that up, I'm like, yo, that's dope. But go ahead, Baba. I don't want to. I don't want to cut your wisdom, man. So you finish up what you was dropping on us, and then so that way we can hopefully, if you have time, ask a couple quick questions before we get out of here.
Okay. Well, there's somewhere I was going with that. There's an aspect of the matrix that touches the astral plane, and it's behind the scenes layers. It's the metaphysical terms, dealing with the other side of the infrastructure of the simulation in which we live in. It's kind of the invisible network and invisible pathways that we have access to, so it's that interdensity corridor, the place where multidimensional beings move between layers of experience, right? So this gets into not only ancestral beings, but also Egbe, heavenly beings, and beings that live in the gray area, hence so-called gray aliens. So there's a lot to that. I would like to, eventually cover that, because I was building up to that. I'm gonna get a little bit more sci-fi, but I like to save that for another time.
Listen, I got some time tonight, but I know, I know what you told me before we got on. But I tell you what, man, I feel like this is gonna become a series anyway. So it's like, really, there ain't no ceiling or no roof to where we're gonna go with this. So I don't care if we do the Matrix 25, you know what I'm saying, part 25. It don't matter. Like, we're gonna
Sure.
cover it all the way because it's something that you and I spoke about off air that I know, you know, what you want and what your vision is for this, and I'm here for it. I got like, what's his name? Moneybag. Yo, I got time today. I got time today, tomorrow. I got time for as many days it's gonna take for us to cover this series. We're gonna make it happen, man. So with that, you know, we're gonna, you know, it's gonna happen by all means necessary. So if you got time for a few questions, I'll definitely drop those real quick before we get out of here. And then listen, whatever we ain't covered today, we're gonna pick up on Matrix Part 3 because
All
we ain't gonna
means.
stop this one. Yes, sir. Yes,
Lay
sir.
'em on.
Okay, so let me see. And we got several families. So if I don't get to yours tonight, please share some grace with me, and I'll definitely screenshot yours and then pull it up on Matrix Part 3 because we're going to definitely continue to do this and make it do what it do and be what it be. And that's definitely going down with these Kabi Ase brothers with Khepra, Baba Khepra, Ptah, and me. So with that, I'm going to bring Nkosi up first. Nkosi says, what is the significance of the architect in the Matrix? And what's crazy, I wanted to ask you about the significance of Ptah because Ptah is considered to be the architect too. But go ahead. I'm gonna defer to Nkosi. What's the significance of the architect in the Matrix?
Well, he represents the left brain hemisphere. Okay, he deals with facts, figures, and he's trying to control the Matrix because he keeps trying to balance out the equation by removing this anomaly. You see, that anomaly happens to be Neo. So Neo represents something that he cannot control. He represents the system that wants to keep things under control while everything has a rule that it must abide by. But these rules will limit you. If you keep in mind, the architect talked about how he tried to develop the perfect matrix at first, where everybody lived in harmony and there was all this love and peace and everything else. But there was still a problem because it went against human nature. Humans found a way to rebel anyway, so that was a failure. You see what I mean? So eventually, it's said to have led to the creation of another program, which was none other than the Oracle. She was an intuitive program that was made and helped design to understand human nature. You see, because the Oracle, the architect does not understand human nature. He has a problem with that because it goes outside of the architect's aspects of control. So we talk about Ptah in the Kemetic system. Ptah represents, a creator that's more sustainable. But in the Gnostic tradition, they see the demiurge, which means architect. To them, the demiurge represented something of control that's keeping you bound into the physical realm, which does not allow you to escape it, but keeps you constantly going back in repetitive cycles. And the architect wants to keep people within the matrix because, hey, people are a food source and an energy source for the matrix. So he has to basically find a way to get you to be satisfied living in these conditions of all these rules and regulations, facts and figures. But
sounds like America.
You see, so reason why he's the villain is because he does not give you the room for creativity. Okay, he wants to control everything, but he doesn't understand human nature enough to stay in control. So it keeps failing. So he has to reset the system. It said that he had reset civilization within the matrix about 7 times.
That's deep. Because if I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me on this because I don't have the research in front of me, but if I'm not mistaken, the planet Earth has been through several so-called, resetting cataclysms, you know what I'm saying, catastrophic, whether it's the floods or, like resets pretty much, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And it looks like we're on the verge of another one. But with that being said, I'm gonna make sure I try to get as many as possible answers. So the next one's coming from, shout out to brother Yusuf Muhammad. He says, Baba Khepra, are we here in this existence to learn the abstract non-physical truth using physical analogies?
Partially, because by exploring creation, it activates the cognitive principle within you. Now, the thing about it is that we're physical beings in this physical form, but we're spiritual. We're spirits in physical bodies. Okay. So when you were already in your undifferentiated state, there was no purpose because you knew everything. You were everything. You are everything, but it's not differentiated. You come into this physical form and differentiate, and then you have a purpose of expression. Then you have a personal story. When you die, there's no end to you. There's only a shifting of reference points. You do not die. So you come into experience. The thing about it is that we want to give it meaning, but it transcends even that. It's experience, and it's divine experience. You are allowed to give it meaning.
Ashe. Nah, that's dope. So I got a couple more real quick, Baba. So shout out to, hope I'm saying this right, family. My Muad'Dib 40 is anger, our ego not wanting to let go.
Partially, there's also a self-defense mechanism, but one thing is that anger is never an initial state of one's being. So if you're angry, it's always a response or a reaction. Now, if you hold on to it, then yes, that's a not letting go. You know, sometimes an anger is also the immediate feel that you need in order to defend yourself, because anger is a higher vibration than apathy. If you're apathetic, then you're less prone to do anything about your situation. Anger also will spark you to move a direction that you need to go. But you can channel that anger and use that anger in forms that are creative for your personal self-liberation and success. You don't have to stay in that state or remain in that state, but just use that as a spark to get you moving. Otherwise, if you hold on to anger for too long, it creates imbalances with your liver, your internal organs, and everything else, especially your liver, because anger builds up in the liver and causes problems.
Man, boy, hey, listen, I'm about to go hook up a fire hose to a fire hydrant, man. You dropping some heat out this thing for real, for real. Like that's listen, I wholeheartedly I feel like that's a I think that's a call that not only should we do a partial on the channel, but definitely a private community call, because every emotion or every, you know what I'm saying, like what we feel and what we do or what we put out into the universe, it all takes a toll on us physically. It takes a toll on our body. Like, so like how you speaking about anger and how that damages the liver, that's a real thing. And like every other energy that we put out there and we project, they all have some sort of consequence that our body or our internal organs, you know what I'm saying, are affected by. So that's deep. I don't know how many people know like how deep that is, but that's a real thing that you're talking about now. You blending like a lot of different realms. Metaphysics, the physical, the spiritual, you know what I'm saying? Like that's deep.
What's the purpose? The purpose is to write God's story from your individual reference point. You are God as a reference of how God's character functions in that particular form. Your purpose is to write God's story from your perspective.
Yes, sir. Okay. We're knocking them down. I got 3 more. Brother Yusef made it again, because like I said, we was going in the comments, really the whole tribe was, but when we stop at Hermetic principles, are we missing the true Kemetic meaning of Tahuti through the Greek interpretation?
That's a good question. The thing about it is that the Greeks were able to home in on universal principles that were learned in Kemet. Okay. Now, they're basically the Greek expressions using the Greek language and Latin language, because let's face it, the Hermetic traditions are all Greco-Latin that comes out of Alexandria and found its way into Europe, right? Coming from the Platonic, a lot of it is Platonic information. So some of it is Kemetic tradition has been filtered through Platonic belief systems. Even the concept of their version of reincarnation and so on, and the daemon or the higher self. So they're basically 7 universal principles, but you do not have to stop at the Greek ideas of how they're supposed to function. So what you do is that you see how the ancient Cometians actually came up with them to their own practice and how they discovered them, and how the Greeks later on came and said, oh, okay, we're going to make this our own. The Kybalion was written by the 3 initiates, but to my understanding, even that is a modern interpretation of something that's much more ancient.
It's so dope. You talk about, so I can't remember who it was. Somebody in the comments was saying about like synchronicity and something that happened a week or 2 ago or whatever, but that right there is powerful, because that not only is that prophecy, that's synchronicity too, because for the most part, what you just said, how you broke down your interpretation, is what I was sharing with them in the comments. It's like, yo, they really just, they parasites. They stole that, the whole deity and character of Tahuti, they stole. You know what I'm saying? They stole that. And that's why I had to shout out George G.M. James with the book Stolen Legacy. Because if you read that book,
right,
that's only one work that goes into it, but there's tons of them out there. And even some of them are by European authors too. Let's just say that, by the way, because the truth is the truth. And some people are going to tell the truth, regardless of what skin suit they're in. So let's just, Black Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, is, but I can't remember the name of the author, but he was a European dude. But anyway, that's powerful, because you really just like put the nail in the coffin of like closing the case with what we were talking about in the comments in regards to like why and how this whole thing came about with them stealing the deity of Tahuti from ancient Kemet and then turning it into Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus and all this other stuff. But that's a powerful answer, man. I appreciate that.
Yes, and keep in mind, they were able to advance their civilization with these principles, right?
Yeah.
In Rome, Roman civilization is degenerate Greek civilization, right? And it ended up becoming what we now have is the Bible. The Greeks are warned, even in actually in the Hermetica, in its Greek and Latin translation, there's a part where it literally says, do not let this knowledge be translated into Greek, because the Greeks would basically take it and do a whole bunch of other things with it, not really understanding. You see, when the priest of speaking with Solon and they were explaining about Atlantis, the Egyptian or the Commission priest said, civilization has been around for many, 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 many aeons, and that the Greeks are children, and that there's not an old man among you. Their civilization, they had already said their civilization by the time Herodotus got there was over 10,500 years old. By the time Herodotus got there. And this is the records that the priest had kept. You know, we only got fragments of Manetho or Marin Tahuti's teachings. We only got fragments of that. And a lot of that is filtered by Josephus, who didn't want to have nothing to do with Kemet. He had a bias because he was Jewish.
That's powerful. And to just put my little 2 cents in there about not only how powerful that is, but how we have historical data, because first and foremost, it's definitely been proven without a shadow of a doubt that the Sphinx itself is well over 16,000 plus years old, well over that. But let's just not even go there. Let's take it back even further than that. Let's go into Mali and go into the Dogon tribe, where they have well over 60,000 plus years of historical data. And we can go way deeper than that, but let's just leave it at 60,000, because they have a Kanaga mass ceremony for every 60 years, if I'm not mistaken, you know what I'm saying, of the cycles. And they have literally rooms on top of rooms on top of rooms of ceremonial Kanaga mass for every 60 years of these cycles. And let's not forget, those same ancient priests and those same ancient elders in Mali are the original Kemetic priests and priestesses and the people of ancient Kemet. And we can go further down the Nile, which we won't go there this episode, but let's not get it twisted or get it fucked up. We know our history. We know who we are.
Indeed.
So there's that.
Indeed. So that's it. You know, a lot of stuff that we're looking at today is reinterpretations of something that is very ancient. And that's why you also have to look through the eyes of your ancestors, and you got to tap into that. And also talk to your Ori for guidance. When you get up in the morning, tell your Ori that I would like to be guided to the truth. Show me. And you will find truths that have been long forgotten. And you will be allowed to have access to these truths. Nothing is really actually forgotten. You just have to locate it, right, in the ancient fields of probability. And also understand that you're not lost. You just got to remember. And why do I say probability? Past, present, and future is all happening at once. So you're still learning how to remember the future by being present. Spirit is not limited to past or future. Spirit can go anywhere and bring you information because time is a construct limited to the physical form. And because someone has created time and then turned around and stole it from you after they created it and got you living in fortified time, that's when they can control your mind and control your time and space, because so-called time and space are related.
I say. Oh, now let me ask you this: you said so-called time and space are related. Do you like where is your school of thought? Do you feel like time and space are related, or are they totally separate? Because I've heard different variations and different versions from different philosophies.
Here's the thing: you wouldn't have a reference of time without somewhere being in space or something taking place in space. In order for you to have a reference in time, there has to be some movement, and movement can only go and travel through space. If there's no time, if there's no space, how are you going to measure time? If you see nothing change, if nothing moves, how can you measure it? If there's just a point, can you find a location of the point? If there's only one point in space, right? Where's it at? The only way you can actually give that point a reference is if you create another point. And then you can draw a line. Now you have direction. Di meaning to split. Rection meaning a path.
Oh, that's deep. Because wait a minute, I ain't got no dictionary or nothing in front of me. But if you say it means a path, but if you put the ER into that, you erect, that means also building or standing up or constructing to push up. You know what I'm saying? Like, right?
Indeed. So it deals with straightness. That's how you know something is correct, because it's straight to the core. That's why if you're down and out, the best place to go is in and up. You got to tap into your core. Break it down to its square roots and you control the variations.
That part. Listen, so I know we got to wrap it up, bye-bye. So I don't know if you got any more time for any more questions. If not, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? Because I know we already kind of went past a little bit further than where we were supposed to go. So we on time and a half, family. You know what I'm saying? Bye-bye. We on time and a half right now. This double time right now because, we were supposed to. But you tell me. Like, I'm good either way because I appreciate it already because this was powerful, as I knew it would be. It was dope.
I'll take 2 more questions.
It's funny because literally there's only 2 more stars. That's dope. That's divine alignment. So with that, shout out to Emperor of Truth. And Emperor of Truth's question was, peace, gods. Regarding the movies, what's your thoughts on the new one coming out with Moses the Black with Omar Epps, supposed to be a parallel of the characters of life in the so-called Ethiopian Moses? I haven't heard about that. Have you heard about that one, Bubba?
Not as of yet, but I'm interested in checking it out.
Gotcha. Okay. You got a take on that one or perspective on that?
Well, like I said, I can't really have too much of perspective on it, you know.
Yeah.
But I will say that it's interesting that Ethiopia has been coming up a lot lately too. Not too long ago. Especially when looking to the concept of the Ethiopian Bible and it's having its 88 books. The thing about it is that civilization, right? Even though it's a result of a merger of people that came in from Yemen, and eventually Kush was destroyed, but there was also a merger of that. The people from Yemen and Kush. You see, and this is how you got our sisters and brothers in that region. And they were able to take knowledge that came from, an earlier time, and they kind of incorporated that knowledge and that way of being even into Christianity. So they are able to reach states through meditation and so on, where they can meditate in the cave, and even the way they construct their buildings in ways in which Europeans look at. And how did they construct that? How did they build that church all the way on top of that mountain like that, which the average person looking like just by trying to walk up the mountain will slip off? See, so these are the mysteries in which Ethiopia still holds today. Now, some say that they have the Ark of the Covenant, right? Whether or not this is true, we know that they have one of the great libraries of ancient knowledge, but sometimes, like we mentioned with the Greek stuff, you may have to look at the mass in which it wears today in order to, interpret it in a certain way. But peel the mask off, and then you discover that the ancient wisdom is still there. What is Greek philosophy other than Kemetic teaching stood on its head? Because that's basically what it is. That's what George G.M. James is basically telling you.
Ashe. So we got one more. Shout out to Kashita369. She says, what about future selves concept?
Well, here's the thing. We are in the past, present, and future. Sometimes your future self can communicate with you. Sometimes you can get information from your future self. Because you see, again, living here, time is a construct. Now, there's something I want to talk about. I talked about it in the last show where we spoke about the matrix. We spoke about another type of future self, and that is these beings that are called gray aliens, and how they speak about how these beings are an outgrowth of human beings. We're talking about over 40,000 years in the future, right? And that's what some have said regarding what the grays are, and that the grays are coming back to collect samples and correct something that went wrong. Correct something that went wrong within their genetic makeup. You see, because they begin to clone themselves, so they became copies of copies of copies. And eventually they are going to develop either hybrids or a new type of species in which they'll look and be more sturdier, all right? They won't have the little tiny bodies and the big ass heads. They'll basically be more in alignment with the emotional body, because they had got rid of the emotional body. But going back to the question, sister, there is only past, present, and future happening simultaneously. There's the eternal present. Your future self is also with you right now. We're just living in a construct of time in which we believe that all these moments are separate, right? That's why they talk about different timelines, because the different timelines are splinters, right? From the aspect of the self. Then there's what is called the oversoul. The oversoul is basically over your variations that's experiencing itself through different timelines. And I have a theory that when you work with Eshu, you can shift to the right timeline that you would like to succeed in life. Because there's a version of you in this timeline that's not doing so well, and a version of you in that timeline that is doing great. One of the reasons why we're not allowed to time travel, in physical form through time machines and all that, is because of the fact that you don't want to have too many splinters in the timeline. So those who are using time machines, trying to go back and change the path, what's happening is that they're going back into an alternate timeline. Do you see what I mean? Am I, making sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because you got, okay, so you have there's a public display of that when you talk about that movie Back to the Future, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also, I wouldn't say private, but I'm very confident that there's almost 100 people on here right now that I'm not the only one who knows, and I'm pretty confident that you know it. But you got to think about the Philadelphia experiment too. That thing that took place with the ships in Philadelphia, where the ship, they tried to time travel and the ship ended up disappearing. And you know what I'm saying? And then it ended up coming back at a different time and space where, like you said, it was in a totally different misalignment. And that's a whole nother conversation, but that's a real thing. So yes, everything that you just said is all real. It's a real thing for real on a lot of different levels. So we've seen it in movies, but it happened in real life too.
Indeed. And often you time travel. That's why you experience deja vu. Yeah. Because you've been there before.
Yeah.
See?
Facts. Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate you, Baba. We definitely got all the questions knocked out, man. And I appreciate you giving us the extra time tonight, because this was another powerful one. I'm looking forward to the next one, part 3 for the Matrix. I'm looking forward to it. So if you got anything you want to leave with the tribe on the way out, the floor is yours. And, I can't wait to make it happen again, because we're going to make it do what it do, babe. We're going to make it do what it do.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to make it do what it do.
Yes, sir. Already.
Right. All right. I'm going to just close real quick. Give thanks and praise to Eshu. Over the way for communication. I give thanks and praise to Rumala. Give thanks and praise to Ella. I give thanks and praise to Ududawa. I give thanks and praise to Lord Amari. I ask that the auras of each and every one of us will continue to be in line with destiny. Make it so that each and every one of us continue to reach our goal and achieve what is necessary for our lives to have meaning from our perspective, and that we may be able to fulfill our purpose as we write our books and our stories of life. We ask that all the Orishas, Oshun, bring us sweetness, or Batala bring us clarity. We ask Ogun to clear the path for us. Ochosi gives us focus. We ask for Yemoja to continue to allow us to have access to care in the world, to nurture us so that we may nurture ourselves. I give thanks and praise to all the Orishas. I give thanks and praise to Oludamari. I give thanks and praise to all the Neteru, the Loa, the Abosan. I give thanks and praise to our future selves, our past selves. I give thanks and praise to the present self. I give thanks and praise to the Ori of all those who have attended this video and this show. May each and every one of you be prosperous. Ase Cashapp.
Ashe. So with that, man, I appreciate you all, Tribe, for joining us tonight. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you came and decided to be here with us. So we appreciate y'all, family, for sure. So we'll see y'all on the next episode. We're out. Odabo. Peace.
Odabo.
ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé sàpò ìyàgbọ́ tẹ́ǹtẹ́ ní takisa ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo ṣe nígbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́ forsake not your ancestors and praise your.